Раз. Коллеги, слышно? Да, хорошо. Ну, будем потихонечку начинать. У нас несколько мероприятий, я так понимаю, в параллели наложилось, но я думаю, что к нам подтянутся.
So we hope that others will join us and we may start. Plus, we also have live broadcasting. That is why we think that the number of audience is about several hundreds at least. And in Telegram channel there is a link, and we think that everyone who is interested in public-private partnership will join us. My name is Maxim Kachenko. I'm the Senior Managing Director of National PPP Center, and thank you for inviting me to host this session within the International Business Week that is going to be dedicated to the topic of new branches and new types of public-private partnership. And in the very beginning, the main topic is the topic of private-public partnership, but we're not going to initiate a political discussion. And the ministry that is governing, the Ministry of Economic Development, decided to build the discussion in the following way. We'll try to discuss the existing practices of projects that are typical to Russia, like schools, sports, campuses, and from this practice we will start thinking about the new branches like children's vacation, healthcare, etc. So where we have certain examples, but there is no systemic approach or systemic program. And in conclusion, we would also like to discuss other types of investment projects that could be used in the regions. And today, during this discussion, we will have the following speakers. Svetlana Marinskaya, the Deputy Minister for Economic Development and Investment of Bashkortostan.
Karpet
Topolyan, the CEO of Oktyabrski Vessel Center, and Robert Shafudinov, the head of the interaction with the government sector from Sberbank, and Deputy Minister of Ministry of Education of Bashkortostan, and Igor Galiulin, the Deputy Head of Administration of UFA. And also online, we will have the following speakers who will join us: Andrei Stepanov, the Minister of Sports of the Russian Federation, Artem Baryshev, an independent expert, the one who is interested in offset projects in Russia, Konstantin Diachkov, the head of infrastructural obligations of Dom RF, and also Denis Shulyatiev, the CEO for Children's Vacation, and also Zhitkov Mikhail, the Deputy Director in Systemic Concession. So we will connect our colleagues during the discussion. I'm happy to see everyone, and we can start. So we have a wonderful set of instruments. We have the dedicated ministries, representatives of private-public partnership, experts. So we will be able to look at this issue from different aspects. And now let's give an overview about what is going on in the sphere of public-private partnership, what are the plans, and what interesting things are going to happen in Bashkiria in the nearest future. Svetlana, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We would like our PPP session to be different from the normal format, and I will briefly tell you about how we built up our work, what success we have achieved, and I would also like to demonstrate the slides to you. I would also like to reiterate that in our republic we have all the legislation for this issue. So we have the list of legislative documents in compliance with the federal legislation. So during 1 year and a half, we carry out different work for attraction of different investors who are interested in PPP sphere and who would like to understand what types of projects the Republic is ready to offer. And at the portal Investor B, we have made the the section on our current projects where we achieved certain results, and also we propose the projects for which we are looking for investors, and they would like these investors to come for different projects in social, utility sphere and transport sphere, and so on and so forth. Something is wrong with the clicker.
Так, все. Значит, портфель.
So, the portfolio of PPP projects,
Обратно можно, да, вернуть? Вот. По сравнению с прошлым,
in comparison with the last year,
по итогам 2022 года,
based on the results of 2022, in general, we have 50 projects for the Republic with a total scope of investment over 75 billion rubles, which is plus 11 projects and plus that amount of money that you see here. And we have 9 projects, projected initiatives with high level of completion. And these are the private concession initiatives. And I hope that next year our portfolio would be added up with the given amount of money.
ну, кратко, так скажем, какие у нас проекты реализуются.
Briefly, about the projects that are being implemented now is our eastern exit and the best practice in Russia. We also we have our health resort, non-government one, and also
Уже на выходе пятое, то есть
we have 4 of them have already been signed, and the 5th is going to be approved. And from the last year, we started to participate in the concession program in education. We have signed the first concession
это Затон Восточный.
on construction of the school in Zaton Vostochny. Next year, the school is going to be completed. And we have also started the consideration of the projects in the field of healthcare. And this year, we have signed
Наш такой, скажем,
our
интересный,
interesting
довольно-таки новый проект.
and a new project for all year round camp in Sibay that is going to be called the Center for Restoration and Health Resort Shihan. And we signed the concession in November. And since this year, we will start funding the project. So we will be the budget shoulder, so to speak, and next year we will see the results. And yesterday we have signed agreement for construction of a campus,
Получается, здесь
and so here we
нами наша команда
see that our team and the team of the Ministry of Economy, together with dedicated ministries and representatives of the ministry, during 1.5 months, we have carried out a lot of work, and yesterday we signed the concession.
сегодня.
Today.
Сегодня мы подписываем 6 школ.
Today, we will sign agreements for 6 schools for 6.5 thousand seats, and so we will have the investor, and the investor will be Proshkola. And in 2024, our children will go to schools of a new format. These schools will be based on a certain project, on a certain design, and so we hope that the construction will be finalized in the time frame that we have identified. We have also several projects in the field of ecology, environment protection.
Так скажем, все
So we have allocated the money for it, and we have the multilateral public-private partnership because we're trying to capture all the spheres of interest, and we are trying to use this mechanism for other branches of industry. So in healthcare, we have the representatives of investors. We are now working on a new project. It will be the new medical center for cardiovascular diseases, and so we have already been selected in terms of sports venues.
с города Уфы.
So we have a colleague from Ufa, and I would like to explain that we have 4 projects to consider with federal funds as well.
Переключается, и как-то мне это...
It's something wrong with the clicker, and
Что мы,
it's irritating.
хотим еще для себя, какие ставим
So what other objectives we have? At the moment, what we have, we understand that we have the certain level of private-public partnership, but we have some other initiatives to be implemented. We need to build up the infrastructure planning process. We need to capture all of the directions and all of the spheres where we can think of provision of different projects for our investors. Taking into consideration the practice that we had with campus, we understand that we could consider different projects and development of different public-private partnership initiatives. We do not have a unified office where all of the skilled individuals will be incorporated who will be responsible for all of the projects immediately. That is why we raise a task to create a dedicated office, because we understand that in other regions the practice of its usage is very positive, and we're also interested in other types of PPP. So far, once we are now talking about the classical forms based on the federal legislation 115, now we would like to consider the alternatives. So in the first turn, it would be the offset contract. And take into consideration with the fact that we have already identified the relationships with the federal authorities and development institutions with the Public-Private Partnership Center, we have offered our colleagues to launch a program that will be related to development of offset deals and offset contracts. And next year, we are going to proceed with the joint implementation of this program, to be able to position this in other constituent territories of the Russian Federation and not only in our republic. Briefly, this is it. Thank you very much, Svetlana. You know what I would like to pay the attention to? I would like to give you a few comments. The first thing is that it's nice to recognize the development of this investment portal or the page dedicated to public-private partnership. We see it year by year that the correct trend is set towards the standard and towards working with investors at an early stage, because, you know, we need to understand the infrastructure and what type of infrastructure needs to be identified. And there is a wonderful opportunity for this portal that it is possible to initiate this dialogue. And it is also interesting to mention that it was a very fruitful year for the Republic based on what we have seen from the colleagues. And there are some specific features associated with your Republic. I would say that 3 municipal concessions have been signed. Maybe there were some challenges with it, but anyway, 2 pilot projects on children's camp and campuses were signed as well. So, and the health resort, it's amazing that the Republic has not been included in the Ministry of Labor program, because you are very experienced in this field. Probably the requirements to these projects are higher than that practice that you have gained, because you have the practice of small and medium-sized facilities. But I see the dynamics, tremendous dynamics that the Republic has covered in the year and a half. And those figures that we see are amazing. And let's try to look at this general picture, and then we'll go to dedicated branches of industry. So we'll try to contradict schools and try and understand whether it is possible to look at the successful practice of using PPP for school construction. Let's go towards healthcare. Now we will start with the schools. And I would like to give the floor to Khabidyanovich on the projects on education, because Svetlana said that we're going to sign 4 concessions for schools, especially including school funded by Sberbank. And about your choice, about the choice between the laws 44 and 115, why have you decided to choose 115, and what are your expectations for this project?
Thank you very much, Maxim Viktorovich. Dear colleagues, well, I can't say, I can show you beautiful slides. I can say you frankly that I had no opportunity to prepare it, and I can just say without any presentation. Yes, for sure. Yes, I am the representative of the Ministry of Education and Science. It is the largest concession in our republic. So we were living happily, and after that we entered this topic. And according to agreements that we sign, we approved 9 objects. So, really, around all Russia, we have some topic with places at schools, with seats at schools. This topic is Russian, around all the federation. This topic is not created in 2022-21. It was recent. It was very in the past. So from the 2015, we have some scopes of necessary seats. In 2016, we were applying this program actively. In the program of development of education in Russia Federation, we called it as the program of creating the second shifts. So by Republic and the state government, there was funding, and according to budget, we have 8.20. And in our project, the Republic program is included. So our customer, our client is UX. So it takes 2 years, but we have to understand that construction is the expensive method of solution, and of 88 and 0.20 we got, but the real number was different. So it was like 60 to 40, but the minimum is 30 to 70. But the funding of development of schools is pretty serious. But in program of 2016, we built 6 schools on 1,600 seats. So we started with taking small projects. It was 500,000, and now we have the project of 225 seats. And the Republic had to invest in this project about 450,000 millions of rubles. So according and concerning the education, we have to 2024, we have the demand of 54,000 seats. We can't decide this just with this case. We want to decide these problems, we want to solve these problems with much cheaper way, and we have to repair, we have to fix old schools, and with this method we can create new seats, and we have to reprofile the seats and classes. Also, we use the optimization of distribution inside the region and district. So have private sector take some activity on itself, but the major activity is on construction, and less expensive methods are implemented on already built areas. It's about the old side of Ufa. There is a the serious problem is new buildings, and the other solution is building new schools. And last years we are on this path. And according to the passport of regional educational system, we have the demand that Ufa should be built with schools. After that, Strelitamaksky district, Ufimsky district, and Neftekamsk. And red-yellow zone is Iglino. And we include it in priority districts, and we're beginning build construction of new schools next year. We have the project of creation seats by 2 shifts, and we briefly call this program demographic subsidies. We have some application which suggested to regions new mechanism of school construction. And we have a problem. We can go to experienced, through experienced path. We can build schools and after that give to the exploitation. On this stage, when we discuss this topic, we have special group. On the first stage of this project, we very carefully entered there with 3 projects. It's a school construction in Zaton micro-district and reconstruction in city of Ufa and Siritamak. And the experience of realization of construction should create 1,250 seats, but I understand that the activity and working pressure on this object are major, but we had no other ways. And in 2023, these projects would be realized, and the school on 1,225 seats in Zaton, this project is created. But this topic isn't well known to us, but we are living happily before these times because the 56 case already existed for many years, but we decided to try something new and to launch this process. I can repeat, also not well-known interest. Private construction initiative was operated, and this process was pretty long-term. And we had some discussions, some negotiations. After the first stage, considering 30 days we couldn't put in, but we had meeting with potential customer, and the object nowadays is being built, and the 30% is already ready. And we can say for sure, so we are giving the plans to ourselves that we have to launch this by 1st of September. And according to this side, that the part that I mentioned, so this concept has its pros and cons, but the major advantage of that is just the pressure on the budget is mild comparably to some case. So it took the priority, and now we are ready to negotiate some 4 concessions on more than 6,000 seats. If we 6 years could build 6 schools, and on every object we had 6 millions, and in 2 years we are planning to have 6,000 years. And simultaneous pressure is pretty comfortable for the Republic. And if we're taking into consideration the construction stage, among around the 70% is being funded by federals and our sides. But some part of the cost is being funding pretty comfortable because it's a state and national project. We can afford ourselves during the construction to have some millions from our budget. Of course, it's a long-term story, and we have to live during the next 10 years because the concession is planning on next 10 years. And now we have some experience, and we reckon that this scheme that was suggested is pretty working. Of course, it has its disadvantages, but There are some moments in federal and our regulatory moments, but we are deciding, we are solving these problems with the second wave, which linked with schools. The mechanism is pretty simple. So it is the only that's included in Russian Federation regulation law. 56 application already included this thing, and so we have regulatory base for both schemes. Dear moderator, if I am too long, yes, let's resume what you said. Let's conclude what you've said. So, just in detail, three main advantages that you saw is possibility to share these expenses with the federal budget. If we divide it, it can be in duration, but we can spend some less assets. As I've heard, what about schools and colleagues? They promise that the speed will be faster than construction partners, but we will see that. But on the first, according to the first wave, we can see that it is successful, and I hope that it have a good continuation and success. And if we spend not many assets from budget, and the financial partner is Sberbank, I want to ask to comment about cooperation of Sberbank.
So, good afternoon, dear colleagues, session participants. Sberbank and the government of Bashkortostan are the partners for quite a long period of time, including the concession projects, as it has already been said, in close cooperation with the Ministry of Economic Development and Investment Policy of the Republic and with the Ministry of Finance, with the Ministry of Education and Science, we carry out the work on implementation of different projects on schools. It has already been said that Sberbank is the financial partner for such projects, and it is clear even now that implementation of such projects is a very good example of cooperation in concession projects. And we should continue to enhance this cooperation, as Sberbank is ready to enter such projects, participate both in the sphere of education and other spheres, in sports, healthcare. So Sberbank has a wonderful experience in structurizing the concession. We have over 300 projects in different directions. We have projects that are prevailing in upgrade of utilities and educational projects. And taking into consideration those measures of government supports that are provided on federal level, so at the moment the scope of financing in social sphere will chase the scope of funding that is allocated for upgrade of utilities. Sberbank is a key financial partner in government programs in federal with federal ministries such as the Ministry of Higher Education of Science, Ministry of Education, and Ministry of Sports. And for the purposes of implementation of these projects, we provide funding of up to 90% from the project budget. We also provide legal and financial supervision and support. We also provide control over the usage of federal money for the concessionaires. So Sberbank is also the first funding institution that provided box solutions in order to provide the investor and the stakeholders with a set of documentation and the financial model. And such solutions were mainly oriented on the key spheres of activities, especially those that are demanded in the market, especially the utility issues. And we also need to mention that the Center of Public-Private Partnership of Sberbank has done a lot of efforts to generate the concession toolkit. So it allows to minimize the cost of a concessionaire in the process of preparation of the agreement. There will be no need to look for external consultants during the preparation of agreement and the review of this agreement in favor of bank for the further attraction of banks and funds from the banks. So it will allow to save the money and time. And we see that the need of the region in development of social infrastructure facilities is really very high, and the usage of the concession is the alternative to direct investment. Concession mechanism is a really very good support for every region in the country that allows to reallocate the budget funds and, on the other hand, stipulate the economic growth due to direct and indirect effects. Thank you very much, Ruslan. I would also like to say that Sberbank Box solution predetermined the success of the program of construction of schools because there were so many projects signed, about 144 projects country-wise, and without having the concession agreement that would be accepted by all of the stakeholders, it would not be possible to achieve such figures, and that is why the box solutions that Sberbank offers is really a very positive example, even though this is not a typical project for Sberbank, and we could see it from the projects with schools, how Sberbank is playing an important role in such projects. And now I am going to breach this with healthcare. We'll understand that in healthcare there are also some typical conventional facilities that we can build for laboratory studies, for outpatients clinics. In all of the living districts, it could be of typical design. There are some unique design projects, like for the cardiovascular center, for high-tech medicine. And in both cases, we need the budget funding because the investments, especially in the small settlements, they will not have enough opportunities for return of investments. And I would like to ask you to tell us about your cardiovascular center and tell you about how it is being funded. Thank you, Maxim. Hello, dear colleagues. I am the head of two. Please sit closer to microphone. I'm the head of two existing cardiovascular centers, and two of them are in the process of construction. So one of those projects is investment project without any federal money, and our team has been successfully dealing with medical projects for over 5 years. Our main field of expertise is the healthcare management, and taking into account the successful implementation of healthcare projects. So we got an idea to try and to bring to life the project in healthcare with concession mechanism. Nowadays, together with the colleagues from the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Economic Development, we have done a lot of work, and we have identified those targets and objectives that are going to be reflected in this project. And we faced the following challenges I would like to discuss with you. The first challenge was related to the fact that such projects in healthcare are almost unique. There are no such projects. That is why we understand that there is no practice, but we see the desire from the federal and local authorities and investors. And the second challenge, so do I understand correctly that you mean the construction of cardiovascular centers, or you mean centers in healthcare? I think in principle that in healthcare there were no such concession projects that are successful. None of the concession projects could be declared. It could not be the same figures as our colleague from the Ministry of Education announced. There are just a few. But we see that in the recent 3 years, only 7 concessions in healthcare were signed for country-wise. This is just a few. And as for the other concessions, we see quite substantial figures. And we would also like to pay special attention to the lack of additional funding from the government. And at the moment, we understand that having the support of the government at the very beginning as the capital fund allocation, for example, up to 80%, such long-lasting projects, I think if we didn't have such a support, then we could have even less projects for the government. And another issue that we're facing is the amount of payment to concedent. And so taking into account that these are the socially oriented projects, these projects are not very much attractive for business. And what I understand by this, investing into such a project, investor does not expect to get over profits, excess profits for the services provided to citizens, especially based on the system of mandatory medical insurance. And it is considered that the insurance tariffs are made in such a way that the cost for treatment and treatment process will be mainly covered by this money, and the investors will not get anything. So we cannot get this money, or even the part of this money, because the federal legislation does not allow this. And just a small part of patients in those regions that we consider could allow themselves to pay for the healthcare services, which would be just a minor percentage in terms of investment, less than 5% from all of the investment scope. So then in your case, those who are paying for the medical care services will pay back only 5% of the capital cost. We looked at our costs in Oktyabrski. The population there is just 140,000, and in our case, this is not the region of the Russian Federation where we have payable population, and our project in this case will be socially oriented. So we would like to solve the social issue for the residents of Oktyabrski medical district and for the residents of Oktyabrski city to make healthcare affordable for them. And not only affordable, but it should be the high-tech medical care.
То есть, правильно понимаю, что...
So do I understand it correctly that due to the existing system of transactions and healthcare system, the only way on how to return the capital cost would be the demand on capital on commercial services in the majority of districts of Russia, and this demand is not very high and is not insured and is not secured. So and the only source of funding would be the budget, whether the federal or regional budget, and in this respect it would be appropriate to have some help from federal authorities, and that's true. We understand we do not want all the burden to be on the local budget. And we do hope, and we would like to ask the federal authorities to pay attention mechanisms of subsidizing similar projects, as I have already mentioned in the very beginning. Having 20%, we understand that these figures, even if we have 20%, the figures would change to the positive. And we need such funding. And nobody will say that we do not need such projects. But unfortunately, taking into consideration the circumstances that we have for the moment, we will have to work a lot. But we are not getting upset. We are stubborn. And we think that we will succeed. And we also hope that you will succeed. It's really a very interesting project. I would also like to say that there is dom.rf, the platform who we used to deal with, but everything is related to subsidies at low interest rate that they used to fund. It was at a very low rate. And there must be certain terms that must be followed. In terms for them to prove that the population is growing, the number of square meters of construction should be growing, and WebRF also has the project factory, but the amount would be about 3 billion rubles. And no matter we calculate, we understand that we are lacking for the medium-sized projects in healthcare to be funded. So we do not see these preferential funding sources, and those interest rates that WebRF and DomRF have probably then it would be interesting to get such mechanisms for us, and because it would generate savings for the budget. Thank you very much. And now I would like to resume this part just to end up with healthcare. Otherwise, I will get you into discussion. Just a quick comment I need about the programs. So we see that there are two approaches. Approach to constructing schools when you have typical projects, like a toolkit that you may operate with. The formula of calculations is clear. There are stiff requirements to structurizing, legal and funding, and there are campuses. It's a kind of a boutique story, and there are agents who perform the review, justification of the financial model, and this is a kind of a manual topic. So it seems to me that as for healthcare, what would be the need in a kind of a mass instrument to be able to attract the outpatients clinics and to scale the lab studies, or maybe it will be related more to high-tech healthcare and unique projects. What do you think, which niches and which portfolio is demanding in the Russian region? You know, as for the topic in healthcare, we've been working on it not for the first year. We started from 14 projects in healthcare. We provided them with a checklist, and we wanted to understand the whole pattern. We wanted to understand what we would offer the investor to approach the project, and as a result, together with the dedicated ministry and with healthcare ministry, we identified the pool of projects because the financial parameters did not allow the investor to see the real story, where they will have the attracted funds, their own investments, and that component at the stage of operation, the return of investment. And out of 7 projects for ourselves, we have identified the first stage, the first line of those projects for the outpatients clinics. And we have such projects. They're almost ready. I told you that these projects are already listed in our system in Investor-B. So these are 3 outpatients clinics. We are not looking at major facilities. We will need to understand with these minor ones, and we need to get an understanding of how to proceed. So far, we would like to start with the outpatients clinics. And it's clear, and we need to understand the economy of this issue. And the Ministry of Health understands the flow of patients. And the project that have just been described, this project considers both outpatients clinics and the medical center. This goes as a kind of a mixed format. That is why in our work, in our concept, this project is very well incorporated. So far we consider that we will be able to bring this project to logical aiding. And in support, we would like to say that we would like this program to be supported in healthcare, on a federal level. And speaking from experience, I would say that as for schools, we've been working with schools for quite a long period of time, but unless the federal procedures appeared where the distributions of roles was made and where requirements were outlined, then everybody was very cautious about concessions. And that is why I think that as soon as we have this similar regulatory documentation in healthcare, and if it's going to be supported by the dedicated ministries, then the story is going to have the logical ending. It's absolutely the same story. We understand that it has to be heard and it has to be supported on the federal level. So it means that the psychological factor, the availability of the government-funded program. So we have the program on sports, we have the program like on sports, take into consideration on how many sports venues we have. And say, by just a small
интереса и конкуренции.
A small carrot, so to speak. The entire interest is growing, so for the private-public partnership. And now we're bridging to sports. I would like to give floor to Andrei Stepanov, public-private projects in Ministry of Sports. We would like to briefly hear about the results of the projects that have been submitted and how this program accounts for itself.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Can you hear me well? Now I will just immediately show my presentation. So I asked you to speak for 5-7 minutes. I'll try. So I want to greet once more. And before coming to the main topic, I would like to thank the organizers of this session as a public-private partnership and government of Republic of Bashkortostan. In sport field, Republic of Bashkortostan took very active participants in many venues, many events. The support is giving subsidies, and as it was already mentioned, there was some selection, and 54 projects are operated. There were selected about 24 projects. As it was mentioned, it's not too large amount of money, but it's great. And it's cool that the demand on this sphere is growing, and we didn't expect such format. In organizing such event from 23 to 25th year, it's about 20 billions of rubles. So in this presentation, you can see some numbers which are for 24th year and 2025. So we have to consider next budget cycle. The general social economical effectiveness, it's about so colleagues from Ministry of Finance on the stage of construction and operating this project. There wasn't a big budget and federal and regional budgets. But the stage of exploitation will give huge effect on facilities. On Volga region, there was a big activity. 35% of all the inquiries, it was from. So four applications were selected, and 2 billion of rubles was funding. So if we briefly talk about why many clients, many companies didn't go through selection, is just because this product should be operated together, and were some faulty things in their companies. But we gave them feedback, we gave them some claims, some remarks, because. But maybe some colleagues just omitted some score, and there was some non-conformity to the laws. But in current case, we can speak about that it is one of the events on support of federal products. And as it said before, and it was mentioned by Svetlana Ivanovna and colleagues, that we have one more mechanism in the healthcare field. It was mentioned also. It's about giving subsidies to loan organizations. Is the result of investments, of appealing attractiveness of investment. So these banks give on realization some loans, some low-interest loans, but less volume of budget. The general cost of the project was 5.9 billion of rubles, but 4 projects were selected with a general cost of 144 billion of rubles. Well, it depended on their financial effectiveness. Only 63 million were the funding of this project, but the subject should fund social economical spheres. So it's a huge record, and also it's a great investment from the federal budget. But also there are many investors in this branch, and I can speak that the part of the effectiveness of this regulation. And it is about mechanism of public-private partnership. Federal institutions spend some budget, and it's a lot. It's a huge amount of it. And next branch, which we are operating actively nowadays, it's about complex work. With our colleagues from Ministry of Finance, of Ministry of Economical Development, also with calculating Chamber of Russian Federation. So the concept and the method that under some circumstances of and rules of this game, and also for investors, and result of this, the profit of this project will be higher, will be much higher. We are organizing a labor group, and we change some rules, and we have to make it to the end, the rules, and to change it according to the district. And I want to pay your attention on the primary stage, that there is target exploitation of facilities, and we are tending to make investor side major. And we want to make this exploitation with investors, and we have to share it with investors. But the main and major is investor, of course, because he understands how to produce exploitation, and technical exploitation should be on him. Not to care, not to have huge expenses on this. So in this case.
Andrei, just briefly, once we speak about the operation and requirements to operation, I think that's really a very important topic. And about those regions that are listening to us, I think 4.5 billion budgeted rubles has not been allocated yet, has not been distributed yet. This is what is going to be distributed later on, and we should keep this in mind. And you should also make a line of those willing to get these funds. So, and now again, bridging to sports and approaches towards sports, like the understanding of what could be scaled, like children's restoration, health restoration, and what would be the main differences of schools and typical healthcare. What are the typical features from the point of view of commercial sense and uniqueness? Because we know that every region has their own set of demanded services, and the commercial potential would be different. And this is something that makes these campuses program different from school program, because for schools we have a lot of budget money, and so it will be just a small amount of services that would be interesting for the investor and concessionaire. So, and there is a lack of commercial review. But for the campus, every campus is unique, and probably for those branches as tourism and sports, we could unify the requirements, but you will never achieve the unification of requirements to operation, because the economy will always be different, because it will be the gender composition that is going to be different. And so we decided to simplify the approach to prioritization of projects. We decided to move to those criteria that will be included in the program based on the limits of the corresponding year. And so probably for the children's vacations and tourism, it will not be possible to do, but the approach was probably the correct one. And I think that it would be really very interesting for the discussion. And I would like to ask about the fact that UFA is now working on 3 initiatives in sports, at least those that I've heard of, and maybe even more. And why this system, why the topic of concessions in sports is so interesting for us? Is it just the business sprint, or there are other advantages that you see in such an approach? Thank you very much. For the beginning, I would like to thank Andrei and to thank the management of the ministry, because this is kind of a real working case, and the business was very positive about this, and we prepared 6 applications from UFA that were in the competition. Thank you very much for evaluation of these applications, and business considered it to be profitable. Being a vice mayor, being a representative of municipality, I am saying that the social effect is really very interesting, and the term of payback is also very interesting, because it will be a municipal property very soon, and we will be representing city then. Our sports schools will have more seats, will have more fields, grounds, and it will be the places for restoration for the residents of the city, and all of the costs will be paid by investor. And the investor, when looks at the benefits and costs, the mathematics is really very positive, and this mechanism is a win-win mechanism. Everybody wins. So, and if such initiatives are going to be supported, if such projects are going to be supported, not only in sports, it will be the micro projects supported for 150, 200 million for one project. It will be really very interesting. Business is capable of building effectively for ages, though expensively, but our entrepreneurs are developing interesting mechanisms and layouts where every single square meter is working. And the matter is not the cost of construction, but the approach to feeling of this project. You know, you can construct differently, you can build differently, and you can put a lot of money into 1 square meter. And there are some entrepreneurs who are very wise in doing such things from the point of view of efficiency. They want these projects to turn into amortization costs, and also then for the city to utilize this project. And we are getting ready for the next year. We are not trying to speak a lot about this program, because we don't want this information to be distributed in mass media. We do not want to see competition, but we want the amounts to be increased, and then the requirements will not be so stiff. Thank you once again, Andrei, to the authorities and Ministry of Sport from the city of Ufa. Thank you once again. It's the second time when I hear your presentation. I think that the City 2030, this is what I've heard, your proactive standpoint about this, when the city has decided to work with one branch of industry and promote 6 projects. This is really a lot for one municipal settlement. And now I would like to give the floor to Mikhail about systemic concession. So Svetlana has already said it was really very fruitful in Ufa, and 2 concessions were signed. I think those concessions are really unique. On the children's vacation and campus, I would like to tell you about these 2 cases. And in the end, just as an additional question, I would like to ask you about campuses on condition that as for children's vacation, children's restoration, there were no requirements, and for campus, there was a stiff requirement for government support. What was easier to get agreements to go through this procedure when you have federal framework or not? Mikhail?
Коллеги, добрый день. Спасибо большое за...
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for invitation for discussion. You know, the results of the Republic are really impressive. I would say that PPP is the real sphere of economy because we see the multiplicative effect at all the levels. So dozens of companies, dozens of private companies are involved. And briefly, I will tell you about our two projects. These are the first projects. The pioneer projects, I'm going to say that these are going to be new projects as far as we have signed the agreement on strategic partnership with the Republic, and we have very ambitious plans on cooperation. Especially the project of private-public partnership. We have wonderful projects as the children's health camp in Siba. This is a project that was announced a year ago. We signed an agreement in autumn 2021, and we also signed an agreement, concession agreement. We started implementing this agreement, and during short period of time, we have prepared the concession initiative. So we were moving through private initiative together with the operator, with the national operator of children's vacations. So they introduced a very interesting and impressive operators model with 4 clusters inside, along with the spaces for children and restoration. They also have the technology cluster, educational cluster, medical cluster. So this is a kind of a comprehensive project for 16,000 square meters, so which is quite a substantial area. It will be an all-year-round camp for 350 children a shift. Over 5,000 children will be able to spend time there during a year. And also, the specific feature of this project is the fact that it is being supported by the Republic completely. The grant was provided, but unfortunately, we were unable to attract federal sources of funding that are going to be generated for other projects. But this is being totally implemented with the Republic. Of course, we understand that there are no dedicated measures of support for further development of this project. I think that at a certain stage we will get this possibility because the old Soviet camp infrastructure is getting obsolete, and we need such comprehensive projects. Such projects are demanded, and we understand that such projects are really very promising for our company. We also see that the project is slowly but surely is maturing, and we had 3 projects of this kind in Khabarovsk, in Yakutia. What is the maturity? So speaking of maturity of a project, we see that the large investors pay attention to such projects. The development institutions, so different development institutes are paying attention towards such projects. And these business cases are really mature and have very high potential for further development. Second project is the project of an absolutely different level. It's a totally different story. It's a federal large-scale project with a lot of funding, investment, with federal investment, regional investment. Approach is different. The criteria is very well outlined by the federal center. Those teams that took part in selection are highly professional teams. And there is high competition in this field. There were about 40 applications in the second round. And we see that our excellences here are very high. We have matured our excellences as well in the process of preparation. 3 of our projects in the second round were incorporated in the list of those projects that are going to be implemented, and we have signed the concession in Ufa. And here we also joined as an investor together with the Talon Group. It's true to say that the level of investment is totally different, and the drivers of the regional growth are different, and the task is that it would be the center of agglomeration. And a lot of directions, a lot of trends will be incorporated, and we understand that the government is more and more demanding towards investors and outlines such requirements that we should comply with. And so the system, concession system, is moving towards the right direction. So briefly, this is it. Thank you, Mikhail. And here I would like to add that based on my feelings, the difference between these projects even from your example, we can see it very well, is the fact that on one hand we have the availability of stiff requirements from the federal authorities that could limit the maneuvering, and there is a certain time frame you are supposed to sign your concession agreement, and everybody will do everything possible to sign it. But in the case with children camps, you used to have the internal term, but it could be shifted by the participants. So far there is a feeling that on one hand, having stiffer requirements, you limit the participants, but implementing such a stiff time frame, it will stipulate the teams to sign the concession as fast as possible. Probably this is the key factor in terms of signing the concession agreement. You know, in that project, it was really a very stiff date of signing. That is why we did maximum possible together with our colleagues, with our system concessions. We have done really a lot. We spent all of our time on development of these two directions. I would like to confirm this because I couldn't even call my colleagues because they were engaged and were busy with the concession campuses. And now I would like to give floor to the person who I announced at the very beginning, to Ilya Shulatyev, one of the most qualified operator in children's vacation, and on one side it would be PPP, and on the other hand he is an operator, and as far as I know he's a very good expert in inbound tourism, and especially the children's tourism. And that is why, getting back to this topic, I was going to ask if such business sprint practice could be scaled into children's vacation, and how could be supported on the regional level.
Не слышно.
Can't hear you. Yes.
Это на нашей стороне или
Is it on our side or is it your problem?
нет? Не слышно, к сожалению.
No, we can't hear you, unfortunately.
У нас на максимуме, да, коллега, включен?
Is it our maximum, colleagues? So, Evgeny, it's on your side. Some problems there are. Try once more.
Нет, к сожалению, нет.
No, unfortunately, no.
Давай попробуем переподключить, я пока...
Okay, let's rejoin. And I will turn to my colleagues to Dom.rf.
Тоже коллег сегодня обозначали. Дом РФ, Дьячков Константин.
Dom.rf, Dyachkov Konstantin. Revenue-yielding bonds are in our life now, and with our all efforts, we try to operate this, and now we have some real case. So can you speak about real practice and experience of this public-private partnership projects? So we can't use every facility of Dom.rf. I will say and repeat it every session. So we have to make some additional mechanisms. So can you hear it? Yes, we can hear you. So yeah, thank you very much. So in terms of program, this exists for 2 years. Last 1.5 year, we are working with public-private partnership concession. Now we have approved 14 projects and 24 projects, and 17 projects were selected. And the mechanism is working good, and there are many projects on subject, on districts and regions. So we have some infrastructure projects. Our project is wider than was before. And as discussed, our project is larger than this which were discussed before. So we have some infrastructure and some allowable assets. The mechanism itself is some funding, and it's linked to house and to housing. So it depends on projects. Well, if we are turning to particular cases, so it's Far East works in this concession very good. Ural and Sibir also are working here very good. And of course, Republic of Bashkortostan is our strategic partner. Now we are operating the second a project to be approved to the end of the year. Now we are inviting everyone, and we want to work with everyone. And well, linking to the house is a vital aspect because we stimulate this construction of houses. If there wasn't this linking, it is clear that it could be additional competence and we could set aside from the program. But our program is oriented on stipulation of this construction of housing, and it's founded on cheap funding. So if we're talking about this topic, we have some rules of terms and of participants in this project. So some colleagues are quite acquainted with that. We are open to discussion with every man who is interested in it, investor or any other person, a citizen. We can help and structure this project. Yes, thank you very much, Konstantin. Yes, I want to ask some question. There are some projects in our republic. If I remember it well, there is idea which was promoted, the creating of some public space, parks, some squares, some territories of new buildings, some riversides, and it's giving to concession. And here is some feature, here's some moment. I told this before to the colleagues. When we are talking about financial stability, we are going to some regression of some partner that he has to take this responsibility for the result, etc. Of course, at schools, the scheme is another, and but parks, public side never takes responsibility for the purchasing. So why do they have to give this guarantee on purchasing? And there is a question, can it be signed, this agreement? And the financial side can be guaranteed by some other guarantees. Maybe some practice of regional guarantee can be returned, which is being promoted by Union Federation. But building this site is possible for many participants of markets and in terms of parks. Yes, maybe it's possible. We are working on that. And we can individually come to every question and operate every question individually. We understand that not every subjects and districts have enough financial efforts and powers. If our concessionaire or other person or other company can operate this process, of course we can make it major to the public side. The same situation was in Sberbank when there was 100% regression, and they cooperated together. But still, the rules of providing is strict. But there is some flexible possibility of construction and operation. So let's try to show him once more. So, is it good? No? Didn't he rejoin? So, let's listen to Artyom Baryshev. To Evgeny we come back later. Artyom Baryshev, sorry to say. Every time I stress wrongly. There was an announcement of our cooperation on purchasing. It is trend of the next year offset. Can you tell me about what is drastic happened in this sphere, and how do you think how to properly manage the situation in this approach that was regulated by the Republic?
So, hello, Maxim, and good afternoon, dear colleagues. It's really a very interesting event, and I would say that the private-public partnership markets of special reputation. There are a lot of cases at the territory of your republic, and so we have made certain prerequisites for changes from the point of view of the government, and it's nice to hear that those risks that are associated with PPP and the attitudes of some deputies towards PPP, the private-public partnership is still developing, and I'm really admired to hear what is being told by my colleagues. Svetlana has already touched upon the offset issue, and I'm in agreement with you, Maxim, that it is probably one of the most promising trend in terms of development of such quasi-PPP mechanisms for the next year and even this year. Many regions have approached the offset legislation and development of offset projects. And now I would like to start demonstrating my screen for you to see better what we could talk about. Can you see it on the screen?
Видим, что не Республика Башкортостан.
So we see that this is not Bashkortostan at this slide.
Мы шутим, Артем, да.
It's just a joke.
Ну, поскольку, да, у меня...
As far as I am experienced to work in Moscow, and the offset mechanism appeared in Moscow, and that is why you see it on this slide. But nevertheless, I will tell you what offset is. Not everyone knows what it is, unfortunately, even now. That is why, for those who is unfamiliar with this mechanism, I will tell you. And later on, I will tell you about what we can work at in the Republic. The offset contract is the government contract on procurement of goods or services with the investment obligation of a supplier. If the supplier supplies the goods, this supplier is supposed to explore the production of such goods at the territory of the region where he supplies the goods. And if it's a service, then he is supposed to create the infrastructure for the service provision. And the positive advantages of such offset contract for the supplier would be the long-term guarantee of sales. As far as this is a government contract that also considered the budget liabilities. In dedicated programs and procurement programs. And also the advantage is the long-term period of this contract up to 10 years. The price formula that is being indexed depending on the market situation. And a very good bonus is that the investor and supplier will be incorporated into single suppliers after the liabilities are fulfilled. And for a region or for a country or municipal settlements and customers or institutions, of course, this will be associated with reduction of procurement cost or supply cost due to the substantial volume, and also increase of the sovereignty, technical sovereignty, and import substitution, so to speak, and also direct investment for new jobs. So starting from this year, the minimum volume of investment to such contracts would be about 1 million ruble, up to 100 million rubles. So for the ones between the constituent territories, it will be about up to 400 million rubles, up to 10 years. For the moment, we have 9 offset contracts. One of those is in Bashkortostan for the total scope of supply for about 80 billion rubles, and 17 billion is the scope of investment. And the main share of contracts have been signed in Moscow, and traditionally Moscow is a leading region in this sphere. And we have signed the offset contract towards supply of pharmaceuticals and medical products and also children's food. And we think that the most promising spheres of application of offset contracts would be healthcare, then road vehicles and utility vehicles, transportation and machinery, and IT equipment, and so on and so forth, including food for social needs. And currently in our country, several dozens of offset projects are being developed in the country, including those for the goods and services, and more than half of the region have already made their legislation in compliance with the federal legislation for all corresponding subcontracts. And this way or another, they're working on offset contracts. Speaking about how this year we improved the legislation in this respect, together with my colleagues and with the Ministry of Finance, with the Anti-Monopoly Service, we participated in the draft law elaboration, and at the moment the offset contract, unlike the previous periods, could be signed by any customer according to Federal Law 44, not only the authorities of the regional level. It could also be a municipal customer or an institution or any entity that is working based on Federal Law 44, and it is possible to procure goods or services and goods and services. So we can do a life cycle contract for supply and further servicing. And we reduced the threshold for investment up to 100 million rubles, which makes the offset contracts more attractive for regions and municipalities. And so we have different types of offset, and the threshold for investment will be up to 400 million. And so having the interregional offset contract, then it's possible to incorporate the additional scope of supply for those regions where there is no localization of production, about 30% of the annual volume of manufacturing, if the volume of investments under offset contract is less than 1 billion. And this year and next year, the interregional offset could be signed for starting from 100 million, and there is no limitation in the single supplier. And so it's a wonderful window of opportunities for investors and regions to sign contracts at preferential terms and improve the investment attractiveness of their regions. We understand that the changes were made very quickly and amendments were made very quickly that made it quite difficult to sign the offset contracts, especially related to qualification and involvement into such procurement procedures. And speaking of our practice in using the federal laws 44 and 115, so about 20% were declined, but it was quite quickly when they corrected the situation, and now we do not have such qualification requirements, and so the revenue should be not less than 20% from the amount of contract. So it's quite a nice requirement for the procurement participant.
Хотел рассказать о процедуре, вернее, порядке.
So I know about the procedure in signing the offset contract, the way how it is usually being done in those regions that already have the practice of offset procurement. So first of all, they review all of the procurement and purchasing procedures in the region, then identify those spheres in which the majority of purchasing and procurement could be packaged into offset contract. Once we have the demand for a certain type of goods, then we can ensure the supply and investor with the demand and also with sales. So far, against this, the investor or supplier could provide a guarantee of investment and establishment of production on premises. And after that, we will work with Association of Manufacturers and with the manufacturers an opportunity to localize such production
возможность локализации его на территории региона, то есть
at the territory of the region, to find the correct site, to analyze it from the point of view environmental protection, also electricity connection, whether it's the Russian origin or not. But this is a mandatory requirement of Federal Law 44 that based on the offset contract, the goods must be of the Russian origin. The term of investment, the scope, and the list of measures for establishment or upgrade of existing manufacturing, as far as these are these essential terms of the offset contract, and it has to be included not just into the offset contract but also in the authorization for signing such an offset contract. And the representative, just 1 minute.
Да, я ускоряюсь, спасибо.
You know, I will accelerate.
Этих условий.
And so then preparation of these terms, authorization for the competition. Such authorizations have to be published at the regional level, and then the competition itself. Thus, the preparation of the offset contract will take from 3 to 9 months, depending on the stage at which the region is. Svetlana has already said that the legislation is ready in the Republic, and here we see that the Republic is almost close to program approach to implementation of offset contract, but it needs to be preceded with legislation.
И здесь Национальный центр ГЧП.
Here we have the National Center for Public and Private Partnership that is in connection with the administration of the Republic to review jointly all those spheres where such procurement procedures could be arranged, promising directions could be identified, and the investors could be found. Then after that, within this program approach, there will be typical types of contracts, and so the formats of contracts, training for the program, not just the team that is in the Ministry of Economy, but also it will be at different levels in all institutions, in administration, in tender divisions. Because offset contract is a very complicated system that requires involvement of different multi-profile experts, and on the basis of all this development, then work on feasibility projects, on the priority spheres. And this is the plan that was offered by Bashkortostan. And this could be managed within the offset contract. Thank you, Artyom. You know, I have a feeling, here we hear Evgeny. Now, just a quick comment on Artyom's presentation. I feel that offset contracts could become a quasi PPP in Russia next year, and this is a comprehensive approach. And the plan of offset procurement in the region could be plan number 1 in order to be able to implement it quickly. I hope that this will happen to be implemented within the Republic. And now, Evgeny, you have 5 minutes or even less. Please, your comments on business sprint model for children's vacation.
Максим, коллеги, всем привет. Удалось хакнуть систему, и меня наконец-то...
Yes, I am heard now. What about business sprint and children recreation? The situation in children recreation is that every support we receive and we actively use it, because on current situation, every measure of support that are in our country, it's a Ministry of Developing of Far East, and it is Arctic concession, and it is obligation of DOM.RF. So this tool wasn't used before, but I hope that in a further time we will exploit it.
Но на самом
really, in reality, in terms of business print, we can get some measures of support on children's camp because we have some sport camps and Ministry of Sport and regional and federal, both the federal and the regional ministries. They support it, and it is the same sports competitions and this children's sports camp. And so in a global sphere, the difficulty of children's recreation is in that there are many ministries included in this sphere. Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Sport. And every time we produce some project, we have to
будет реализовывать
consider these things, coordinate these things with every ministry and what has to be done on the basis of every project. So what about difficulty of this sphere? It's season term. So we have to conserve some facilities. We have to employ some staff. So we employ and we include some additional education systems and centers, and we have to make accommodation for children. Now, with colleagues from Systematic Concessions, we have signed 3 concession agreements. It's Yakutia, it's Khabarovsky district region, and so Republic of Bashkortostan, also our partners. So we have to build 150 these children centers, and it allows us to improve and to increase the volume of the facilities, the number of the facilities. On 1 million of children, we have to build these facilities, and this demand is does exist in our country. So we have this federal program on funding this project. It's subsidies on reimbursement of expenses on this project, and we calculated that it's about 30 billion rubles. And it allows us to invest and to include many billions of rubles, and I hope that it allows us to realize this project. Recent created Association of Youth Movement, and I hope that this movement will have close relate to this children recreation, and maybe they will be one of the initiators of these children recreations. Yes, it's interesting that the drivers make a successful path of project. So your difficulty is your strong side, your power. And Ministry of Nature, you've forgotten, because there are some programs of camping and such and etc. So business print, we can relate to many programs that exist and not waiting for our own one. And also, I've forgotten, the Ministry of Tourism is very important role player in our program. So, to conclude our session, we've discussed nowadays and future projects. As center of PPP, we will coordinate with Republic, we'll help colleagues. We have big plans of purchasing, and we want to implement many programs. But we have to play with higher base. We have many launched programs and projects. I hope that we could do it better, and we can improve the number of it. We have some systematic approach to that. And for that, Republic of Bashkortostan is the crucial platform for implementation of huge projects. Thank you very much for our relation and cooperation with these projects. Thank you very much. So let's applause to our colleagues for the participation, and to the members and to the audience for being with us. So thank you. Subscribe to our channel.